Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into something I bet, well, a lot of us have felt at some point, especially if you've ever been completely wiped out by schoolwork.
Hmm.
It's the relationship between how we handle our emotions and that feeling of academic burnout.
Right.
Think about it. Why do some students seem to manage the pressure, exams, deadlines, while others really struggle and feel totally drained?
That's a great question. And to really understand what's going on here, we've got some fascinating research to look at. It's a recent meta-analysis published just September 2024.
Okay.
It's called Emotion Regulation and Academic Burnout Among Youth, a quantitative meta-analysis. Now, what's really cool about a meta-analysis is that it's like looking at the combined results of a whole bunch of studies.
So it gathers everything together.
Exactly. Helps us see the bigger picture, find those stronger patterns.
Okay. So for you listening, our mission today is basically to pull out the key insights from this research. We want to understand how your own ability to manage your emotions might be connected to those feelings of academic burnout. That sense of being emotionally exhausted by school, or maybe that kind of negative, distant attitude towards studies.
Or even just doubting your abilities as a student.
Right.
Yeah. And it's helpful, I think, to have a clear picture of what academic burnout actually is. This study uses a pretty standard definition. It talks about it having three main parts.
Okay, what are they?
So first, there's emotional exhaustion, that feeling of being just completely drained by school demands.
In there.
Yeah, I think many have. Second is cynicism, which is sort of a negative, detached attitude towards your academic work.
Like you just don't care anymore.
Kind of. And the third part is a feeling of reduced personal accomplishment or, lack of efficacy, that sense that you're not really succeeding or feeling effective as a student.
Got it. Exhaustion, cynicism, feeling ineffective.
Precisely. And what's striking is that this isn't just happening in one country or one system, it's recognized internationally.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other piece is emotion regulation, or ER.
Right. Emotion regulation. It might sound a bit technical, but really it's just about how you deal with your feelings.
How so?
Well, the study defines it as the process by which individuals influence which emotions they have, when they have them, and how they experience and express their emotions.
Okay, so it's about managing the whole emotional experience.
Pretty much. And it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? If you're good at navigating your emotional responses, especially stress, it could really affect how you handle school.
Yeah, maybe even protect you from burning out.
That's the idea. The intro to this meta-analysis actually points out that good ER skills have been linked to better learning, more motivation, even procrastinating less.
Interesting. So the big question for this deep dive then is, what does all this research bundled together tell us about the connection between different ways of managing emotions and academic burnout in young people?
Exactly. That's what we're digging into.
Okay, let's unpack this. What was the main takeaway, the overall link they found?
Well, the researchers definitely found a significant connection, but it's not quite as simple as good emotions mean no burnout. They looked at two main categories of how we handle emotions.
Right?
First, they identified adaptive ER strategies. Think of these as the helpful things we do.
Like what?
Things like reappraisal, trying to see a stressful situation in a different, maybe more positive light, or acceptance, just accepting how you feel, or even problem solving, actually trying to fix what's causing the stress.
Okay, the constructive approaches.
Exactly. These strategies tend to lead to better outcomes. They help us modify how we feel in a good way.
Got it. So what's the other side of that?
The other category is what they termed ER difficulties. These are the, less helpful ways we might try to manage emotions.
Uh-huh.
Things like avoidance, trying to dodge situations that make us uncomfortable, or suppression, trying to hide or bottle up feelings.
Pretending they're not there.
Right. Or getting stuck in negative thinking loops like rumination, just worrying over and over, or blaming yourself.
Okay, so the stuff that doesn't really resolve anything.
Pretty much, these difficulties are linked to, not being effective at changing how you feel, and they often come along with more psychological symptoms, more distress.
And how did these two types, adaptive strategies and difficulties, relate to burnout in the meta-analysis?
The results were quite clear, actually. Using those adaptive helpful strategies showed a negative association with overall burnout.
Meaning more adaptive strategies, less burnout.
Correct. The more young people used these healthy strategies, the less likely they were to report burnout.
Okay. And the difficulties.
On the flip side, having ER difficulties showed a positive association with overall burnout, and importantly, it linked positively with each of those three dimensions we mentioned.
So more difficulties linked to more emotional exhaustion, more cynicism, and more feelings of inadequacy.
Exactly. All three.
Wow. So if you're someone who tends to, say, avoid dealing with tough school stuff, or you bottle up frustration, this research suggests that might actually connect to feeling more burnt out.
That seems to be the pattern, yes. It's a really significant point.
Did they give a sense of how strong these connections were, like quantitatively?
They did, yeah. They used correlations. For instance, the correlation between ER difficulties and overall burnout was around 0.25.
What does that mean practically?
In research terms, 0.25 is considered a significant positive association. It tells us there's a clear trend. As difficulties in managing emotions go up, feelings of burnout tend to go up too.
Okay, so the link is definitely there.
Yeah.
But you said earlier it was nuanced.
Mm.
Where does it get more complicated?
Right. It's not always straightforward. The researchers found that several things can kind of moderate that relationship, change how strong it is.
Like what?
One of the big ones they looked at was the level of education. They compared students before university, so primary and secondary school kids, with university students.
Ah, okay. And did that make a difference?
It did, significantly. Grade level affected the link between ER difficulties and overall burnout, and also cynicism, lack of efficacy, and emotional exhaustion.
So it played a role across the board.
Pretty much. But here's something really specific. For the link between ER difficulties and feeling inadequate, that lack of efficacy piece,
Yeah.
that connection was statistically significant for the pre-university students, but not for the university students once they accounted for grade level.
Whoa, that is specific. Why might that be? Any ideas from the study?
Well, the author suggested a couple of things later on. One thought is that university students often have more independence, right? More say in their learning.
True. More autonomy.
Yeah, and that increased control might sort of buffer the impact of emotional struggles on how competent they feel academically.
That makes sense.
Also, younger students, those before university, might still be more influenced by external things like parental expectations, the specific classroom vibe.
Right. Less control over their environment, maybe.
Potentially. And that could make the negative hit from ER difficulties on their sense of ability feel stronger.
Yeah, I can see that. The context definitely shifts between high school and uni. Were there other factors they found that changed this relationship?
Yes, they also looked at the average age of the participants in the studies they included.
And age mattered, too.
It did. They found mean age significantly influenced the relationship between ER difficulties and overall burnout. The actual stat was a beta of negative 0.0184.
Negative 0.0184. Sounds small.
Statistically small, yes, but the negative sign suggests a trend. It hints that as the average age in a study increased, that positive link between ER difficulties and burnout got slightly weaker.
So maybe older students, even if they struggle with emotions, have found other coping mechanisms over time.
That's one possible interpretation. Maybe just more life experience helps buffer it a bit, even if the core difficulty is still there.
Interesting. What else?
They also looked at gender, specifically the percentage of female participants in each study sample.
And did that make a difference?
It did, yeah. The proportion of female participants significantly influenced the relationship between ER difficulties and overall burnout, and also specifically the emotional exhaustion component.
How so? Were the links stronger or weaker in samples with more females?
The beta coefficient's negative again,
Yeah.
which suggests that in studies with a higher percentage of females, that positive link between ER difficulties and burnout, especially the exhaustion part, was somewhat less strong.
That's
Right.
counterintuitive, maybe. I might have guessed the opposite, given societal pressures. Did they speculate why?
They touched on it, yeah. They referenced other research suggesting girls and young women often report higher stress levels, maybe face greater academic expectations.
From parents, teachers themselves.
Right. So it's complex. It could be that in groups with more females, these existing pressures interact with emotion regulation in ways that this kind of analysis can only start to tease apart. It definitely warrants more research.
Absolutely. Okay, one more factor. What about the quality of the studies themselves? Did better studies show different results?
That's a good question. But interestingly, no. The meta-analysis found that study quality, based on how they rated it, didn't significantly change the overall relationship between ER and burnout.
Okay, so that strengthens the findings, right?
Yeah.
Suggests the pattern is robust.
Exactly. It suggests the main findings weren't just an artifact of some studies being, better designed than others.
Right. So we've got the overall link. We know it's moderated by things like school level, maybe age and gender mix. What about specific ER strategies? Did they dig into whether, say, reappraisal was much better than acceptance, or if suppression was the absolute worst?
They did touch on specific strategies, but they were cautious. They noted there wasn't always enough consistent data across all the included studies to make really strong claims about every single strategy.
Limitations of the available research.
Exactly. But they did highlight a few things. Suppression, that trying not to show your feelings thing, consistently showed a positive correlation with burnout in several studies.
Okay, so bottling it up seems reliably linked to burning out. That tracks.
It does. On the flip side, cognitive strategies like reappraisal, changing how you think about things, and positive refocusing, shifting attention to good stuff, generally showed a negative association with burnout.
So those seem protective.
Generally, yes. And conversely, strategies like self-blame and rumination, getting stuck on negative thoughts, showed a positive association. More blame, more rumination, linked to more burnout.
Makes sense.
But again, they stress that even these findings weren't perfectly consistent across all studies. So the picture for very specific strategies is still developing.
Okay, so the general categories adaptive versus difficulties seem clearer than the effects of each individual technique. Got it. Now, a big question with this kind of research is always cause and effect.
Ah, yes, the directionality problem.
Right. Does having trouble managing emotions lead to burnout?
Ah.
Or does being burnt out make it harder to manage your emotions? Or both?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the researchers are upfront about this. Most of the studies in the meta-analysis were cross-sectional.
Meaning they just looked at people at one single point in time.
Exactly, like taking a snapshot.
Yeah.
You can see that in that moment, ER difficulties and burnout are related, but you can't definitively say from that snapshot which one came first.
So it's a correlation, not necessarily causation proven here.
Precisely. It could be that ER difficulties increase vulnerability to burnout, but it could also be that the experience of burnout, the exhaustion, the cynicism, erodes your ability to regulate your emotions effectively.
Or like a feedback loop.
That's very possible.
Yeah.
The authors actually mention another study, a longitudinal one, following people over time that looked at ER and things like depression and anxiety.
What did that find?
It suggested it could be bidirectional, a two-way street. Poor ER could predict later distress, but experiencing distress could also worsen ER over time.
I see.
And the authors of this burnout meta-analysis suggest something similar might be happening here. It could easily be a cycle.
That really resonates. I mean, if you're feeling constantly overwhelmed and exhausted by school, it probably does become much harder to use those healthier strategies, like reappraisal. You might just not have the energy.
Exactly. You might default to avoidance or just getting stuck in negative thoughts because that feels like all you can do.
So it really highlights how tangled these things can get.
Absolutely. And why we need more of that longitudinal research following kids over time to really unravel the cause and effect pathways.
Okay, so we've covered the main findings, the nuances, the specific strategies, the cause and effect question. Let's try and bring this back to the listener. What are the key takeaways someone should consider about their own experiences?
Well, I think one clear point is for younger students, those still in primary or secondary school, if you find yourself really wrestling with feelings of not being good enough academically.
That lack of efficacy piece.
Right. And you also find it genuinely hard to manage negative feelings when they pop up. This research suggests there might be a particularly strong link to burnout for you.
That's really important for younger students and maybe their parents and teachers to be aware of.
Definitely. And then, regardless of your age or school level, if you recognize a pattern in yourself of using strategies like avoidance.
Like putting off that big assignment.
Yeah, or just pretending it doesn't exist. Or if you tend to suppress your feelings, try to keep a stiff upper lip when you're stressed about school.
Mm-hmm.
The findings strongly suggest these patterns could be connected to higher levels of burnout. The link between ER difficulties and burnout was consistent.
So even if avoiding something feels like a relief in the short term.
It might actually be contributing to that bigger feeling of being burnt out overall.
Yeah, it sounds like this research really backs up the idea that, actually facing and processing our feelings, even when it's hard,
Hmm.
is ultimately better for our well-being and how we experience school in the long run.
I think that's a fair interpretation, yeah. And maybe one other thing to reflect on. Think about your peers. Have you noticed any differences, maybe gender related, in how people around you seem to handle academic stress and burnout? The meta analysis finding about the percentage of females being a moderator, while it needs more digging, does hint that social or gender factors might be playing a role in this whole picture. It's worth considering.
Okay, that's a lot of really useful insight packed in there. Let's try and summarize the absolute core message from this deep dive.
Okay. I'd say the key message is that how we manage our emotions, our emotion regulation, plays a really significant but definitely complex role in academic burnout.
Not simple, but important.
Right. And it seems like having difficulties with things like avoidance, suppression, rumination, might be more strongly linked to burnout across the board than simply lacking those positive adaptive strategies, though both matter.
And context is key.
Absolutely. Context matters. Your age, your school level, pre-university versus university, maybe gender dynamics. These things seem to influence how strong the connections are.
So this meta-analysis, by pulling together all those studies, gives us a much clearer, broader view. It's a shortcut to understanding a huge amount of research on this.
It really is. It provides valuable insights into that interplay between our emotional world and how we cope with academic life.
And that leads us, I think, to a final thought for everyone listening.
Yeah.
Maybe take a moment now or later today and just consider, when academic pressure hits,
Mm-hmm.
what are your go-to strategies for dealing with the emotions that come up?
Mm-hmm. What's your typical pattern?
Do you try to reframe things,
Mm-hmm.
solve the problem? Or do you find yourself maybe avoiding the issue or pushing feelings down or getting stuck blaming yourself?
It's a powerful self-reflection exercise.
Because, based on this research, could understanding those personal patterns be a really crucial first step, either in preventing burnout before it starts, or maybe beginning to address it if you're already feeling drained?
I think it absolutely could be. That awareness is often where change begins.
Definitely something to mull over. And if this discussion resonated, if you recognize some of these patterns, maybe look into resources on building more adaptive skills.
Yeah, there's a lot out there. Things like mindfulness, cognitive behavioral techniques. Lots of practical tools exist that can help people develop healthier ways to manage difficult emotions.
Worth exploring for sure.
Indeed. Understanding this link between your emotions and your academic life is it's a really valuable piece of the puzzle for navigating the challenges of school.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope it's given you some food for thought and maybe a fresh perspective on navigating the pressures of academic life.